All right, here we go. Good evening, baseball fans. This is the Bicoastal Baseball Podcast on the Grid Network, the only exclusive baseball podcast on the Grid Network. I am Mike Guido. That's Dalton Brown. It is great to have you with us. We have plenty of stuff to cover today. We are officially in June. It is officially dog days of summer, I think, Dalton Brown, even though it's not technically summer yet, but I think we can pretty much count this as the beginning maybe of the dog days of summer. Dalton, how you feeling? How was your weekend? What's going on, man?
Feeling good. It's an exciting time because you have enough season behind you now that it feels like we're starting to get a feel for the season, but you still have so much baseball in front of you that you don't feel like you're nearing the end. It's
Right.
For me, the baseball season dog days are June, July, August. So I think we're right in the start of it. I would agree. But yeah, really excited to talk about a number of topics today, including Dodgers, Yankees coming up next weekend. I think we'll both have plenty to say about that a little later on.
Yeah, no, it's going to be fantastic. I think that's going to be a series that the entire baseball world is going to be excited for. I'm trying to think. It's this coming weekend, and I'm certainly going to be looking forward to that without a doubt. Plenty of stuff to go over today. Obviously, we got our rants coming up first a little bit later today. Dalton texted me earlier today, and he's just like, I am going to rip into Tommy Pham. So that's going to be, make sure you stay tuned for that. That's going to be our first out today. I'm just going to let him go ham on Tommy Pham.
I've really had enough.
So we'll touch on that whole debacle. The Mets, I mean, listen, you can see Dalton's wearing the hat today. The Mets are in a position where, okay, they sent Brett Beatty down to the minors. They've sent some guys down to the minors. They've seemingly taken just a plummet. Their season has really kind of taken such a big turn for the worse. And we touched on it briefly last week how Gary Cohen and Ron Darling are just kind of trying to hang in there as broadcasters. It was kind of funny how that's going. But with that, can we expect a fire sale coming up? Where can some of these players, who are going to be some of the players that are up for sale? Who's going to be buyers in that market? We'll touch on that a little bit later as well. Again, we'll touch on the Yankee-Dodger series coming up this weekend. Again, that's going to be a really, really exciting series in the Bronx. And then again, end of the show today, Dalton's Hot Corner. Put some more money in your pocket. Okay, so let's get started today. As we do every show, we cater to our own fan bases. Sorry, not sorry. Yankees, Dodgers, here we go. Okay. As a Yankee fan today, I'm feeling pretty good. Going 7-2 on the West Coast road trip. There's nothing really not much to complain about. Taking 2 out of 3 from the Padres, taking 2 out of 3 from the Angels, and then sweeping the Giants in San Francisco against 3 pretty good pitchers. I know Blake Snell has really struggled this season, but Jordan Hicks, Logan Webb, Blake Snell, that's not an easy back-to-back-to-back in a series. And the Yankees really kind of took advantage of that pitching staff all series. Obviously, the big thing was yesterday, in yesterday's game, the 4-run 9th inning against Camilo Doval, who's one of the shutdown closers in Major League Baseball. He's phenomenal. Juan Soto with the go-ahead 2-run homer. I mean, it's just so electric. And I think I tweeted this out over the weekend where we could be entering territory, and we may have already entered territory of the presumed Juan Soto, Aaron Judge duo in the lineup is maybe even better than we thought. Like that could be even, they might be even better than what we expected. Listen, look at what Juan Soto is doing this year. 322, 17 homers, 53 RBIs. He's got an OPS of 1031. Aaron Judge right now, 288 after a rough start, mind you, 288, 21 homers, 47 RBIs, 1075 OPS. They're the only 2 players in Major League Baseball with an OPS over 1,000 at the moment. They have been absolutely raking. The heater that Aaron Judge is on right now leads the majors in homers, leads the majors in walks, leads the majors in slugging, leads the majors in OPS, leads the majors in OPS plus. He leads the American League in doubles. And again, this is after an April that where he was hitting like 190. Like, all of this is happening in the month of May. He has been in an absolute tear for the last month. There was some bad news on the Yankee front. We're going to miss Clark Schmidt for about 2 months. And that's, I think, a pretty considerable loss. Now, again, the rotation has been pitching well enough to the point where they shouldn't miss him too terribly. But listen, he was 5-3, 2.52 ERA, and the ERA, a whip just over 1.1, 60 and 2/3 innings, 67 strikeouts. And he was just kind of getting to a point where he was getting more comfortable going deeper into games. He was one of the really reliable starters in this rotation. So that's going to be, I think, a loss. Obviously, the Yankees are not going to rush Garrett Cole back, but I think it's coming at a relatively decent time to where, in the next week or so, maybe a couple of weeks, we could be seeing Garrett Cole come back into the fold in the rotation. So, throwing a positive onto a negative, it could be coming at a pretty decent time. But Dalton, I'm feeling pretty good today. Good West Coast road trip. Aaron Judge, Juan Soto knocking the ball everywhere. I'm feeling okay.
Yeah, I mean, what is there not to feel good about?
That's right.
Like, it's funny because you watch that Giants-Yankees series, and finally on Sunday, it's like, all right, Giants are going to take one here and at least steal one. And then Juan Soto with a 2-run homer in the ninth, the place is going nuts like it's Yankee Stadium out west. So I got to imagine that for you, that type of road swing is a ton of fun. I mean, I know the games are late at night, but that's got to be a ton of fun. I always love watching the Giants get swept, so I enjoy that. Any opportunity to kick them while they're down is something that I relish. So. Good for the Yankees. I mean, they're just doing what they're doing right now. It's hard to argue that there's a team that's hotter in baseball. I think right now, like, in other sports we do power ratings, right? Where we think about like, how would you power rate a team today, right? Yeah. I think in terms of like, every team going into a game today, it's hard to argue that you'd put anybody ahead of New York with how they're playing. So, definitely a great time to be a Yankee fan. A baseball season is full of highs and lows, right? So that there will be both over time. This is certainly a high. So, man, good for you guys. Obviously, bummer about Clark Schmidt, but he'll be back. I think the one person who that's good news for, not to look at it as good news, but Luis Gil is probably pretty safe in the rotation for a good while now. As I think there might have been some debate as whether it was him or Schmidt who might have their spot taken. So I think you'll get to see Gil for a good while longer now. And maybe he'll make his Cy Young case for you.
Oh, hey, there you go, man. But that's really the thing. And you bring up a good point because that's, I think, something that kind of got lost in this too, is like we were kind of debating, are the Yankees going to go with a 6-man rotation at some point because Luis Gil is pitching so well, or is somebody that's deserving of being in the rotation going to get bumped? And now with Schmidt's injury, I mean, again, it's not something that you root for, of course, but at the same time, you're like, okay, now you don't really have that problem on your hands. It's you know what it is? It's finally nice as a Yankee fan to have some fucking pitching depth. Where we don't, one injury does not throw the entire thing off kilter. It's great. Right. So,
no, it's a good spot to be in. And, you need it, right? Every team needs to have pitching depth, whether you know it or not before the season, you need to have it. And it's something both our teams have, which is a lot of fun. To address the last week of Dodger baseball, I mean, look, 5-1 is fine, right? I mean, obviously I'm not going to be like upset about it, but I will say, like, as far as 5-1 weeks go, they don't get much less convincing. First of all, like, the one loss on the week was just a total flaccid effort, man. Like, you simply cannot let Dakota Hudson throw 7 short shutout innings against you, like, ever. It just shouldn't happen. I get it. They were coming home from an East Coast trip. Maybe they were a little flat, but, like, the at-bat, what bothered me was just the at-bat quality in that game was lazy. You get spots in big spots with runners on, guys are just going up there kind of hacking. It didn't seem like they played with a whole lot of want it in that game, which is always just frustrating to see. But I mean, look, they went 5-1. They played the Mets and the Rockies. Like, okay, look, I mean, you got to beat who's in front of you, right?
Yeah, wins or wins, man.
Yeah, I mean, the comeback in the first game at Citi Field was nice. The game where we scored 10 was nice. Other than that, though, the offense has not done a whole lot. I mean, Dodgers scored 9 runs total in that Rockies series.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. I mean, about as lackluster of a 5-1 week as you could possibly have.
Yeah. No, it's really interesting because like everybody I think can kind of understand like the Dodgers are going to be fine in the long term, but
Right.
at the same time, it's like, what you said before is like baseball seasons are long. It's very, it's full of highs, full of lows. The Dodgers definitely seem to be in somewhat of a low right now, despite going 5-1. But at the same time, you're like, okay, you don't really expect a lineup this good to ever really fall asleep, right?
Yeah.
Like they've kind of gotten to a point where like it almost became concerning for a week because they just were not scoring runs. But again, like I said, man, look, wins are wins. It's at this point where like you're not like, even though they're ugly, like you're not throwing away a series against the Rockies. You're not throwing away a series against the Mets. I would argue it's very, very hard to throw away a series against the Mets right now. But again, wins are wins, man. That's really all you can ask for.
Yeah, I mean, look, like if you had told me, hey, Dalton, after 61 games, Dodgers are going to be 38-23 and like 6 or 7 games up in the division, I'd be like, okay, we're doing what we're supposed to do, right? So, I mean, I think that's the story right now is we're doing what we're supposed to do, and it's fine. This week is obviously, we'll talk about this weekend, but I'm also really excited to watch the next 2 nights. Tomorrow night, Tyler Glasnow against Jared Jones.
Yeah, that's a good one.
It's a ton of fun in Pittsburgh. And then James Paxton against Paul Skeens in the next one. And then Walker Buehler, Bailey Falter Wednesday, kind of the least exciting of those 3 matchups. But yeah, I mean, I'm excited to see if facing like that type of pitching kind of wakes up our at-bat quality.
Yeah.
Like I'm hopeful that it kind of knocks our guys back into focus because it felt like, you go into a series with Colorado where you're facing Dakota Hudson, Cal Quantrill, and Austin Gomber, and we kind of just looked like we were going through the motions. So maybe a day off. Weird part of the schedule for the Dodgers too. I want to comment on that. They go on the road to Cincinnati, on the road to New York, come home for 3 games against Colorado, and now they go on the road to
back east to Pittsburgh.
Yeah, back on the road to Pittsburgh and New York, and it's like I don't love that from a scheduling perspective. It feels like a little brutal. So I'm hoping that they don't look tired this week. I mean, I'll tell you this much. If the Yankees play the way they did this weekend and the Dodgers play the way they did this weekend, we're in trouble. But I have a feeling both teams will be pretty high octane for that series.
Oh, yeah. I think that's going to be a series where both teams are going to try to, that's circled on the calendar. You know what I mean? I think for both clubs, that's circled on the calendar. All right, so let's give you our first score update. As of right now, again, it's a Monday. It's one of these traditional Mondays where there's not very many games being played. Phillies right now up on the Brewers in Philadelphia heading into the 7th. Phillies up 3-0. Nationals over the Mets, of course, 4-3 right now in the top of the 5th in Washington. The Orioles on the road against the Blue Jays. They have a 5-2 lead. In Toronto in the bottom of the 4th. And the Tigers and Rangers just kicking off, still scoreless heading into the bottom of the 1st. And the Cardinals put up a run against the Astros in Houston in the top of the 1st to start that game. And later on tonight, Reds, Rockies in Colorado. Andrew Abbott, Ryan Feltner getting the start. That is a riveting pitching matchup. Might I also say that the Giants Diamondbacks game later tonight in Arizona with Eric Miller and Ryan Nelson is another riveting pitching matchup that I think we should all be looking forward to. And then the Padres and Angels playing in Anaheim, Matt Waldron and Tyler Anderson. Tyler Anderson's actually been pitching pretty well for the Angels this year, ERA under 2.5. But speaking of the Tigers, by the way, before we get into the 1-2-3 inning, I thought this was unbelievably interesting. They sent Spencer Torkelson down, like former number 1 overall pick. I think he only had 2 homers on the year. so far. He's supposed to be one of the better hitters in that lineup, if not the best hitter in that lineup. I mean, that's if you're a Tiger fan, that's pretty troubling at this point, right?
Yeah, it's a tough scene in Detroit with that. I mean, obviously, this guy was all world. It's funny too because people will be like, "Oh, here go the Tigers missing with another pick," and it's like, no. Anybody would have picked Spencer Torkelson at the time.
Everybody, yeah.
Like 100%. He was the guy in that draft, and so it's hard to blame them for the pick, but he just has not done it at this level. I saw a stat today. They had that one crazy game against Toronto last week. It was like 14-11, and he had a few hits in that one.
Yeah.
Outside of that game, he's 0 for his last 35 with 14 strikeouts. I mean, that's like what Chris Taylor's been doing with the Dodgers level bad. So, you feel for him because that there's a lot of pressure on him. There are a lot of Tigers fans that have been hitching the wagon of the rebuild to him. So I hope for his sake that he goes down to Toledo and kind of figures it out. Because I'd like to see the kid succeed. But yeah, it's a tough scene in Detroit.
Yeah, I'd love to get your opinion on this again, because like I said, I like to pick your brain sometimes just because you played at a higher level of baseball than I did, and I'm curious because at least when it comes down to lower level high school baseball like I played, right? A lot of it is, up here, and I'm kind of thinking because Spencer Torkelson was the number 1 pick in a draft for a reason. The guy can absolutely he can hit the ever-loving piss out of a baseball. There's no doubt about it, right? Do you think that in certain instances, and I'm sure in it's a lot of individual cases, it depends on the player, but do you think in a lot of cases with this, do you think it's is it something mechanical with him, do you think, or do you think maybe it's more mental once you get to this point?
I haven't watched enough of his at-bats to feel like I have a good feel for his at-bat quality, so I won't go too deep in on that. But, I mean, when you look at his, how he profiles as a hitter, the bat speed is there. He doesn't chase a ton. But other than that, he's been awful. I mean, the expected batting average for him is even worse than it's actually been. He's second percentile. He's not barreling the ball up hardly at all. He's striking out way too much. He's not walking very much. He's just been a really bad player. And it's a bummer because you'd like to see some kind of leading indicator of a positive thing coming for him.
Yeah.
And he just hasn't shown it. His average exit velocity is the lowest it's been of his 3 years in the majors. He was better last year and the year before. He's just not a good major league hitter right now. And he's only walking 7% of his at bats. For a power hitter like him, it's just I think pitchers are not afraid of him, right? I think they're going right after him because they know that he's not barreling anything up. So it's tough to watch.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely. I mean, he's always struck out a ton since he's been in the majors. But I mean, it's really unfortunate to see also, just because you saw what he did last year. 31 homers, 94 RBIs. Obviously he has a below average OPS, right? He's had an OPS of 750 because his on base percentage is low. The guy doesn't walk. But you saw progression from his rookie year to last year, right? You're thinking, okay, 30 home runs, 90 RBIs in his second year. Okay, we're seeing something now. And then this year he has just been really, really awful. So
it feels like he made an adjustment and figured out how to hit for power at that level, and the league adjusted back, and now he's deer in the headlights.
Yeah, right.
So, I mean, we've seen guys have this happen and then come out of it and figure it out. We've seen other guys never figure it out.
Yeah. No, it's a shame that we're seeing this from him right now. Hopefully he does figure it out. Okay, and with that, let's go into the 1-2-3 inning. So the first out, Tommy Pham. So this was an interesting little debacle that we saw over the weekend. He got into a skirmish this weekend, play at the plate, didn't take he took exception to I guess some words or something from William Contreras, who, on a play at the plate. Tommy Pham, he's actually been fairly decent for the White Sox since he came over. He's been, I think, in a bit of a lull recently, but overall 280, 3 home runs, 12 RBIs. He's playing for a really terrible team. So he's, I mean, probably considered one of the more productive players in that lineup, which isn't really saying much. But Dolan, I'm going to let you have this one because this is what we're all looking for here.
Here's the thing about Tommy Pham. The question is not like, is he or can he be a productive player?
Yeah.
I think we all know that he can. Like, he's a decent big league hitter, big league outfielder. Like, he's a guy who is, in terms of on-field production, is worth having around. Yeah. There's also a reason that he's playing for the White Sox this year. And there's a reason that he didn't get signed until after the season started. It's because he's an asshole. Like, let's just call it what it is. The guy's an asshole. Like, he's, first of all, let's talk about the play that actually happened.
Yeah.
He's, moving, 5-6 feet in onto the grass, almost as if he's approaching home plate from the pitcher's mound and, like, seeking out contact. And then making this whole thing of like, oh, there was a physical play. I need to let everybody know how tough I am. And just like walking around the field, like, shadow boxing and saying, I'm going to fuck this guy up. I want to fuck this guy up. He don't want these fucking problems. It's like, dude, like, grow up, man. Seriously. Like, grow up. Enough. And then post game, he's in front of his locker and he's standing there with his, like, going like this on his beard, on his chin, acting like he's some tough guy. There's a reason why I do all this fighting in the offseason, because I'm prepared to fuck somebody up. Dude, like,
it's corny.
Nobody gives a shit. That's not what you're here for. You ever notice that every time Tommy Pham is, like, in the news, it has nothing to do with what he's doing on the field? It's all because he's creating an issue either with a fan or he's slapping Jock Peterson over something fantasy baseball related, or he's starting a fight on the field.
Yeah,
like, he's just an asshole. Like, teams don't want him in their clubhouse because he's an asshole, and he acts like an asshole on the field. And he, like, dude, nobody cares. Like, nobody cares that you think you're a tough guy.
Yeah.
Like, go fight in UFC, man. Right? Like, go do something where that's useful. Go learn how to skate and be an enforcer in hockey, man. Like, go do something else if that's what you're here for. It's just such a tired act. It reminds me a little bit of like Madison Bumgarner, the way he used to act on the mound, where it's like, dude, like you're good at what you do, but the constant bullshit is just so annoying. So I've just had enough of this guy.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, hey, listen, I don't think that you're alone in that sentiment. Tommy Pham's, it's worth pointing out at this point, right? Because you say grow up. He's 36 years old. You know what I mean? So he's been around the block for a long time. It'd be one thing, I think, if this was some 22-year-old, 23-year-old rookie or second-year player that, like, just doesn't, like, get it yet. But it's not. This guy's been around the league. I mean, how many? So Tommy Pham's been in the league for 11 years. So this is his 11th season in the major leagues, and it's his 8th major league team.
I wonder why. I wonder why. Like, it's funny. There were a lot of Dodger fans who were like, "Man, we need a right-handed outfielder." This is before the Dodgers signed Teoscar Hernandez, and I'm like, you can go sign Teoscar Hernandez, who's a delightful clubhouse presence and hits the cover off the ball against lefties, or you can go sign Tommy Pham, who's an asshole and hits the cover off the ball against lefties. Make your choice. Like, I mean, the other thing with him too, like when you start looking at, well, who's he been playing for, right? Like, last year he's with the Mets and then with the Diamondbacks. He got traded at the deadline to a contender. Good for him. Before that he's with a not great Boston team. Before that he's with a bad Cincinnati team. Spends a couple years in San Diego. He's in you notice how he's not really. I mean, outside of last year, he's not really playing on World Series contending teams.
Yeah, right.
Like, it's just kind of not like, because teams that are at the very top aren't interested in his bullshit. And look, what's fascinating about it is, like, he's a guy that a team like the Braves could really use at this deadline. And so we'll see, like, is one of the legitimate contenders going to take a shot at picking him up, or will it be one of those fringe contenders? I bet it's a fringe contender.
Well, it's interesting, right? Because again, I think it brings up the interesting conversation of like how do you balance personality with production? And Tommy Pham I think, kind of, because when Tommy Pham's career started out, right, when he was in St. Louis, the Cardinals thought really, really highly of him, and they gave him, he gave them good reason to. But then pretty much after that, I mean, you're right. I mean, you were almost like forgetting that this guy was still in baseball at this point. And then he kind of remakes a name for himself last year in Arizona during the World Series run. And again, Tommy Pham was like, I mean, you can't really deny it, right? Like, he was pretty big for them in that World Series run. He played really well in the postseason. Like, Tommy Pham was really good for the Diamondbacks last year. And again, for the White Sox this year, again, he's no doubt a productive player, given how poor, how bad this team is, obviously, given the circumstances. But, I want to bring something up about Tommy Pham, which I thought was really funny, right? So again, I live in New York. Everybody I know is a Mets fan. It's just the way I am. I live on Long Island, so most of Long Island are Mets fans, right? Because again, Queens is closer to Long Island than New York City. And one of the guys, the big influencers in Mets culture is, of course, who? Frank the Tank, right?
I love Frank the Tank, by the
way. Frank the Tank is funny. I used to think he was a little bit sporadic and a little annoying, but now I kind of like him. It's pretty funny. But Frank the Tank is I think he's either at Citi Field or in Chicago. I forget exactly where it was. And he's having a conversation on the field with Tommy Pham. And he was talking to Tommy Pham about how like, because Tommy Pham last year, after he got traded from the Mets, was like, that locker room is terrible, right? Like you don't have leaders in that clubhouse. Like I forget what the exact words were, but he was just absolutely crapping on the Mets locker room, which
of course
it's probably warranted, but he was still doing it, right? So Frank the Tank is then saying to saying to Tommy Pham, he's like, I was really disappointed when you said that. And Tommy Pham, like, almost immediately, like, seemingly starts antagonizing Frank. And he's like, no, Tommy, like I'm upset because what you said was the truth. I'm not saying that, like it just seems like, that's why when I texted you earlier, I'm just like, it almost seems like he's finding reasons to get into skirmishes. Like, I was surprised when a few years ago we saw that Tommy Pham and Jock Peterson got into a legitimate fight in the outfield before a game over something that was fantasy football related. And I was like, it's over fantasy football? Like, that's what it is?
Yeah. So here, two things, right? Number one, like, Jock Peterson is a pretty tough guy to not get along with from everything that I've heard. Like, if you're having beef with Jock Peterson, like, it's so hard to take your side.
And I think you can make the argument. I'm sorry to cut you off, but I think you can make the argument that Jock Peterson is the opposite of Tommy Pham, where Jock Peterson's not that good, but yet contending teams still like to roster him.
Yeah. I mean, Peterson's the guy that comes up with, he comes up with clutch hits, right? He's got great power against righties. Like, obviously he's a limited player, but he is what he is. And
but he's 210. Like, it's insane.
but he's a guy that you'd rather have around than Tommy Pham, because Tommy Pham's an asshole. Like, that's the thing. Like, I'm not at all disparaging Tommy Pham, the baseball player. Like, he's fine. I think he's a solid piece to have on your team baseball wise. I just like, he's just the kind of guy that, like, he just seems like a miserable human being to be around. And I'm just so tired of, like, his shtick. Like, it's just enough already, man.
Yeah. No, I think it's time. It seems a little high school for me, right? Yeah. It's a little much. But all right, let's go to out number 2. So the Mets are I mean, they're bad, right? like I think we're kind of at the point right now where like Met fans are totally, like, they're almost checked out of the year. They're done, right? 24-35. They're in 4th place in the NL East. And that's only because the Marlins are somehow worse than them, and they actually gave up a month ago. And the Mets are still just 3.5 games better than them in the standings at the moment. They're 16.5 out of first. Listen, I think it's, it sucks to say that a team's season is over in June, but it pretty much is. Again, I don't like saying that, but let's be honest. 24-35, like I just said, they started sending guys down to the minors, right? They just sent that young pitcher that they really like down back to the minors, who was pitching pretty well at the major league level. Brett Beatty ends up going down to the minors. Again, it just seems like they're trying to find something that works. And like I said last week, so many Met fans now are turning on Steve Cohen, despite the efforts of a $360 million payroll when they paid Verlander and they tried paying Correa and they paid Max Scherzer. Like they threw money at these guys, and it just turns out that they didn't work. I was talking to a buddy of mine earlier this week, and he was saying that, like, as a Yankee fan, he's a Yankee fan just like I am. I wasn't even looking at it like this, but he was. He was saying that it's so delicious seeing the Mets, like, realize that, like, after saying for years and years and years and years, for eternity, saying the Yankees bought all their championships. And then the Mets try to buy championships and realize that doesn't work. It's the funniest thing. But we're kind of expecting a fire sale here. Now, what exactly that means, I don't know. I'm pretty sure we can expect Pete Alonso to be on that list. But Dalton, what do you make of this whole thing? Who do you expect to be on their list of guys that could go elsewhere? What do you make of the whole situation in New York?
Yeah, I mean, at this point, I'm just interested to see who they move. Because I think you're right. I think Alonso at this point, like, they'd probably be kind of dumb to not move him.
Yeah.
And I think you'll probably see Severino get traded. I could see Minaya getting moved. He's on, he has that option for next year too, but I could see him getting moved. Obviously, JD Martinez. He's another guy that, like, they're, if he keeps hitting the way he's been hitting, like, they should get something back for him. The problem with the Mets is a lot of these guys are expiring contract guys, and they're not young. So it's just hard to imagine them getting, like, massive returns. But at this point, like, if you're the Mets, you got to do something to go a different direction, like rebuild with some new young faces in the building, whoever the hell they are. Looking at where these guys could go, I think Pete Alonso, like, the teams that make the most sense for me with him are maybe the Mariners or the Astros. Given how Jose Abreu has been a mess, the Astros don't really have a ton of answers at first base. I could see that making a ton of sense, especially his right-handed power in that ballpark.
Right. No, 100%.
Yeah. And then obviously Seattle just needs more hitting in general, and I think a power hitter like him would fit well there. The problem is he's 29 years old. You could make a good argument that he's already, like, on the downturn of his career, just given, like, the body type and play style. Like, he's a guy that's kind of going to wear and tear quickly, you would think. First 4 years in the league, WRC plus 137, WRC plus since the beginning of last year of 121. So there's been some clear decline there. So I don't think they're going to get the world for him, but you'll get something for him.
Yeah.
So he's the most interesting piece to me.
Yeah, no, you bring up the Astros, and that was the team that I was going to bring up as well. And I think you've brought that up before because of the decline, obviously, of Jose Abreu, where he's just been, I mean, they sent him down to this is a 38-year-old player who's a former MVP, and they sent him down to the minors. Yes. And, they just don't have the answer there. They're playing John Singleton a lot at first base. And again, they're just not getting much production out of that spot, even though he had a bomb against the Yankees however many weeks ago. But Pete Alonso, I think, is definitely a fit there, right? Because, and like you said, the Astros are not a team that have a ton of prospect capital at the moment anyway, but it shouldn't cost anything super magnificent to bring Alonso into town. So I actually really, really like that fit. Again, this is another thing too, is that like the Mets, I don't think are in the market for, like you said, like they're not going to go get they're not getting a top flight I doubt that in any trade they make, they're getting a top 100 guy. Like, I just don't know that that's the business that they're going to be in. Maybe Alonso nets one, like maybe a lower tier top 100, like they net the 88th overall prospect in baseball or something like that for Alonso, but like that's kind of where I imagine it. And again, a lot of these guys are either 1-year deals, right? JD Martinez, veteran 1-year deal. Luis Severino's on a 1-year deal. Like, these are guys with expired. They're purely rentals. You never, ever, unless it's Juan Soto, like you're never getting anything substantial for a 1-year rental kind of guy. So that's kind of where they're at right now.
Breaking news from Mike Guido: the Washington Nationals are trading number 88 overall prospect Yohandy Morales to the Mets for Juan Soto. Breaking news from Mike Guido here. I mean, I think across the trades that they're going to make, expectations should not be. Now, look, expectations from Mets fans are going to be through the roof, but they shouldn't.
Oh yeah.
I think some of these other guys are interesting to think about too. Like Severino is not what he was like in his prime when he was like really good with the Yankees.
Right.
But he's reinvented himself into like a decent enough starting pitcher. Like he's a guy that will be useful for some kind of a contender. Obviously, with the injuries that the Braves are dealing with, they come to mind as a team that you could see making a move to have just another decent starter. The Astros as well. A lot of this with the Astros too is going to come down to like how do things look for them a month from now.
Yeah,
right. Because they've got some work to do before they can argue that it makes sense for them to be buyers. But yeah, I mean, I think Severino, Sean Manaea could be an interesting guy to see move. Harrison Bader has been pretty solid. There are guys like Nimmo and Lindor who are in theory off limits. Yeah. But like I wouldn't totally count on that being the case. Like, because if the Mets do want real prospects back, you could probably get like a real prospect or two for somebody like Lindor. And you look at some teams that need middle infield help and are willing to maybe swallow that cost. I mean, I saw somebody on Twitter talking about Francisco Lindor, the Dodgers. Like, that's not really something that I would want the Dodgers to do given what it would cost. But you have to think the Mets would listen if teams with prospect capital are wanting to make a move. I also, I could see the Padres deciding they need a 75th shortstop on their major league roster. And, just knowing the way they operate, couldn't you see them giving the Mets the farm for Lindor just to make a splash? So, I think everything's on the table, whether they're going to say so or not. I think everything's on the
table. Here's the thing, though, is could you at this point even trade Lindor? Like, Lindor is on a $341 million contract. He's going to sub 700 OPS. Like, could you even do that? Like, they would have to eat at least half his contract.
They would definitely. Yeah, they're definitely going to have to eat a good bit if they did something like that, especially if they want real prospects back.
But that's the thing. I would understand if they could get something legitimate back, right? Like Steve Cohen has more money than God, so I'm not really worried about his wallet. But it's look, last year we saw Francisco Lindor. He hit 254, 31 home runs, 98 RBIs, but he's also now entering the wrong side of 30. He's signed till 2031, right? And right now he's hitting 227 and he has a 698 OPS. I'm not even sure that even if you did eat up a good portion of his contract, that you're getting solid prospects for Lindor at this point. The value might be to keep Lindor, honestly. I'm not sure that you can get anything for him.
I mean, it's a fair question, right? I think the only way they trade him is if a team is willing to overpay. Because they're not in a position where they're selling him at the top of his market. I just think that there are teams out there that might be willing to overpay. And I think there are going to be teams out there who want to have that conversation. Now, if you ask me, what are the actual chances of Lindor getting dealt? 15%, right? Yeah. Whereas, I'd say Severino, Alonso, Manaea, maybe Bader, these are all guys who I'd say are 60, 70% getting dealt.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I would bet that I think Alonso is getting dealt. That's one that I'm I'm ready to bet on him being dealt. JD Martinez, same thing. I don't think he's around for the whole season. Like JD Martinez in his career, for the most part, has bounced around the league a few times. I don't expect that trend to end now.
JD Martinez is like Tommy Pham without the baggage and better, in the sense that like he's a guy that teams sign, like a team like the Mets, right, or a team like the White Sox. You're signing a guy like that knowing that you're going to flip him for a prospect, and you're hoping he hits well and that you can get a good one. I think, like, could JD Martinez end up back in like Arizona maybe? I don't know. I mean, certainly there are teams out there that need a DH.
Yeah, right, exactly. That was the other point too, is that you have to kind of JD Martinez kind of needs a specific fit somewhere, because he's not going to play the outfield, right? Like you need to be able to send him somewhere where his only job is to hit. So,
right.
And that might be more difficult than it seems, really.
It could be, but given like just what his bat is, like just the pure hitter that he is, I think they'll find somewhere for him. I mean,
he's Nelson Cruz at this point. Like, that's just kind of
perfect comp for what he is. Yeah, I mean his bat. I loved having him on the Dodgers last year. I mean, he was just so consistent.
I'm surprised you didn't bring him back. I mean, well, I'm not really. I mean, Ohtani's going to be playing DH every day. I get it, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'll say this: like, because of Ohtani, you couldn't entertain bringing him back. But
right.
Like, if Ohtani was like, if his arm was in shape enough to play outfield this year, oh man, that would have been fun.
Oh man, imagine that. That would have been. Yeah, you're right. That absolutely would have been fun. All right, let's go to the third out. Yankees Dodgers this weekend, buddy. So, are we shit talking now, or are we saving the shit talking for next Monday?
I don't feel like I'm in that much of a place to shit talk, to be honest. For one, like, me, I'm not a guy who goes too crazy over a series in June in general.
Yeah.
It's just not really in my nature. But it'll be a lot of fun. It'll be a good kind of test for both teams of like, hey, here's a playoff atmosphere against one of the best teams in baseball. Like, how ready are you, right? Like, how, do you look like you're ready for the moment? The projected
I expect sellouts all three games, by the way.
Oh yeah, I would imagine. Yeah. The projected pitching matchups: Friday night, Yamamoto and Cody Poteet. So Cody Poteet against the Dodgers. I'm hoping we can get after him.
Yeah, you're hoping you can get after him. But I will say, in the whatever it is, 2 starts that he's had, Cody Poteet's actually pitched pretty well.
Yeah. No, I mean, look, everything the Yankees are touching turns to gold right now.
That's right.
Gavin Stone and Nestor Cortez, another awesome test for Gavin Stone, a guy who's just been passing every test that's been put in front of him lately. I'm really excited to see him pitch in that environment against that team. That could go horribly wrong, but if he can give us 6 solid innings, I'd feel really good about it. It's funny, the way I look at a series like this, and I'll touch on the last matchup in a second because that's what I'm really excited about. But the way I look at a series like this is like, it's just a great opportunity to learn. Like, and you hope that like if I'm Roberts, right, and you're on that flight from Pittsburgh to New York, like, the conversation I'm having with my team is like, hey, treat this like it's a 3-game wild card series.
Yeah.
Like, let's go into this series and let's fight like hell to see if we can win 2 out of 3, if for no other reason than to get like what feel like really live reps, and I think it's a part of the Dodgers schedule in general that I'm excited for, because they, after the series in Pittsburgh, which will be fun in its own right, they go to New York, then they come home and play Texas and Kansas City. These are all teams that are either, we're supposed to be playoff contenders or are playing well. So I'm excited to see, how we do over the next couple weeks. It should be better baseball than what we've gotten the last 2 weeks. So I want to touch on the Sunday matchup, because Sunday Night Baseball, Tyler Glasnow and Luis Gil. At this point, we know what Glasnow is, right? He's seen a ton of the Yankees. I'd be curious to look at what those numbers look like.
I think, if I'm not mistaken, he's really, really good against the Yankees. He kills us every day. When he was in Tampa Bay, I hated seeing him, dude.
Yeah, he's pretty damn good in general. But man, I mean, I'll let you speak to this, but what an awesome opportunity for Luis Gil too, right? To kind of test and see like, hey, where are you actually at?
Yeah, if he shoves against the Dodgers, dude, I mean that's something, really. I mean, here's the interesting thing, and I think you'll like this coming out of me, because on Saturday, by the way, it's Gavin Stone and Nestor Cortez, right? That's the game where I'm almost certain the Yankees are going to win. And the reason is because Nestor Cortez is left-handed, but Nestor Cortez is also unbelievably better at home than he is on the road. Like, Nestor Cortez on the road has an ERA that approaches like 7. His ERA at home is like 1. Like he is dominant at home. So that's how I feel about that one. But the other thing I'm really kind of interested in seeing, and it's going to be for the first few seconds of the game, is the amount of booing that Yamamoto is going to hear when he steps on the mound in New York. I'm being dead serious.
No, you're right, and I'm actually fat, because here's the thing. Like, I mean, I get that Japanese baseball environments are like electric in their own way, but they're not electric in a negative way in the way that environments can be in the States. And look, I mean, that's part of what I mean when I say, like, I want our guys to like embrace that atmosphere, because it's going to be hostile, right? Like, I want, because it's funny. We saw it a little bit with Yamamoto when the Dodgers were in Chicago at Wrigley. I was at that game, and it was packed to the gills. And bases were loaded against him in the first inning. That place was bearing down on him, and he ended up getting out of the inning scoreless. And you could see like the emotion kind of wash off of him.
Yeah.
This is going to be that, but like doubled. And so, whether he crumbles a little bit under it or whether he comes out and shoves, either way, I think it's an awesome opportunity for him to get a little bit of an introduction to like, hey, buddy, you're going to have to pitch on the road in October. Like, this is what it's going to be,
Yeah. With a bunch of fans that absolutely, like, genuinely hate his guts. Like, like we're kind of at a point now where like Yamamoto is pitching well enough to where, and again, the Yankees are playing really well. They're not thinking about Yamamoto that much, but they will be that day. Like, they will on Friday night, they will be. Like, they're going to look at Yamamoto and say, you mother effer. Like, you played us. Like we gave you the jersey and then just went cross country to go sign with your buddy Otani. Like, I'm telling you, it's going to be brutal for him on Friday night. But it is, I think it's going to be a phenomenal series. It really is. I mean, and that's going to be like, it's going to be one of those series where like every game, and again, this could be bordering on redundant, but where every game is legitimately going to feel like every fan's going to be there for all 9 innings, right? Every eye in the like, you're going to see, I think, like, these are going to be some of the most watched games all year on television. Like, the atmosphere of these games are going to be so big that you're 100% right. It is going to feel like, listen, guys, this is virtually the playoffs. Like, it's June, but this is playoff baseball. This is what it's going to feel like. So
it's a great dry run for both teams, right? It's a great opportunity to get exposed to that environment, get exposed to that pressure when the stakes are a lot lower, right? Because here's the thing. If either one of our teams gets swept, we're not going to be coming on here on Monday and being like, oh my God, we're fucked, right? It's going to be like, well, that wasn't fun. I hope we learned from it, right?
Yeah, right.
So I think that's what's fun about a series like this in June. It's a little bit like in college basketball. Duke plays in the Champions Classic every year. And for those who don't know, I'm a Duke graduate and a huge Duke fan. And like, you get a game early in the season in a neutral environment against a Kansas or a Kentucky, right?
Yeah,
and it's like what an awesome opportunity in November to say like, hey, before you do anything, let's throw you into a March Madness environment and see how we look against another team that's going to be there, right? It reminds me a little bit of that. So I'm really excited. Mike, one thing I'm really upset about, well, I'm not. I'm going to be having a great time, but I'm flying to San Diego on Thursday because I'm going to be at a buddy's bachelor party all weekend at a beach house. And I'm fairly certain that the Dodgers are blacked out in San Diego.
Oh, come on.
So, like, I'm not kidding when I say I'm going to be lucky to catch 3 innings all weekend.
That's terrible.
It's awful, but look, this is one of my best friends. He's not much of a baseball player.
Yeah.
I got to be
you
there.
can't miss it. You can't miss it. I'll be honest about this. Like, nothing there are very few things in the world that infuriate me more than when sports make watching sports hard. Like,
100%.
it infuriates me like you wouldn't. Why in the world does a blackout exist? Why does it exist? I can't stand it. And I understand it's all TV money. I understand it's all that. But
it's antiquated, the reasoning behind it, right? Like, it's all about like, oh, well, in your local TV market, and it's like, dude, like, local TV markets are not really a thing anymore. Like, that era's done. That era's behind us. So no, it's I would argue it's the biggest black eye on MLB right now in terms of their ability to grow the game.
Yeah, it's the dumbest thing in the world. It is the dumbest thing in the world. Okay, so I'm glad I was able to get that off my chest for a second, because God, that pisses me off like you wouldn't believe. And again, like, I don't really have to deal with it as much because, like, the Yankees are in a position where like they have Yes Network. So any game that is not on national TV is not, like, it's a Yes thing, right? Like, you can still watch games on Yes. But the Yankees have also sold out to Amazon Prime. They've also sold out to Apple TV. And I'm like, I don't want to buy 7,000 subscriptions so that I can watch a Yankee Tiger game on a Wednesday night. Like, I'm not doing that. It's stupid. I absolutely hate it. And baseball wonders why that the game isn't growing at the same rate as some of these other sports. It's just, like, pisses me off to no end, like you wouldn't believe.
Mike, we're going to have a lot of time for it this season. One of these weeks where there's not much going on, if you want to spend an hour just getting the fuck after Rob Manfred with me, like, dude, I'll bring a beer and we can sit here and we can just go to town on the guy, because I got a lot to say.
There we go. See, there you go. we'll call it a Bicoastal Baseball special if we do that. The Rob Manfred roast of the grid or something like that. Okay, but anyway, Yankees Dodgers this weekend could be the most exciting series of the year. Or at least it probably will be for me. I mean, hard to make predictions, Dalton, but I'm going to ask you to do it anyway. What do you think happens this series? Split, sweep, something? What do you feel like?
I don't think it'll be a sweep either way.
Yeah.
I think the pitching matchups, like, I kind of like the Dodgers to take 2 out of 3. And it's weird to say that because I don't feel good about how we're playing, but it reminds me a little bit of when we hosted the Braves earlier this year. Yeah. And, like, we were kind of playing like shit, and, like, I didn't feel very good about it. And then we, like, swept them. And it was like you could kind of see there was a different level of attention being paid to our at-bats. There was a different level of, like, intensity to the way the Dodgers were playing. And I think, like, if that's something that we can be in the practice of being able to, like, summon, I think that's a good thing. But part of it is, I think, Cody Petit, Nestor Cortez, Luis Gil, like, Gil's been nasty, but Glasnow, Gil, you probably slightly give the Dodgers the starting pitching edge there still.
Yeah.
I think Yamamoto Petit, you're clearly giving the Dodgers the starting pitching edge.
Right. Yep.
Cortez, Stone's been lights out lately, but I feel like both of those guys, you kind of don't always know what you're going to get. Right. So, like, I don't feel like there's any game I look at and I'm like, ooh, that one's going to be, like, I don't think we're going to win that one. Mm-hmm. And as a Dodger fan, and just to poke you, I'll say Dodgers 2 out of 3. But I wouldn't be surprised if it was 2 out of 3 the other way either, to be honest at all.
just I love how you threw that in, and just to poke me. But no, I'm kind of on the same page, right? Like, I think Sunday's game with Gil and Glasnow is going to be like nothing into the 8th. Like, it's going to be that kind of game for me, because Glasnow owns the Yankees. He has his entire career, right? Like, he feels comfortable pitching in Yankee Stadium. Like, I don't know. He owns the Yankees, and Luis Gil is on an absolute heater. So I think that's going to be a fairly low-scoring game. I still feel comfortable about the Yankees on Saturday against Gavin Stone with Nestor Cortez, primarily because I think Nestor Cortez at home against the Dodgers is a fairly decent matchup for Nestor Cortez. Poteet Yamamoto, that's the game where I'm like, I don't really know what's going to happen because, like, there are definitely worlds where I can see the Yankees getting shut out by Yamamoto and the Yankees touching up Yamamoto. Like, I could see both of those worlds happening. So, again, I will lean 2-3 Dodgers in the sense that I'll give the Yamamoto, I will give, I'll go Dodgers Friday, Yankees Saturday, Dodgers Sunday. That's probably where I'm kind of leaning at this point to be objective. So, see, Dalton, I'm a better person than you. I didn't jab at you. See?
Apparently you are. I mean, look, because I'm just looking through different Dodgers stats against Cortez as we're talking through this too. Teoscar Hernandez has crushed him in the past, 5 for 13. But other than that, Ohtani 1 for 9, Betts 0 for 2. Freddie Freeman's never faced him. Will Smith 0 for 1. So, I mean, the Dodgers' big bats just haven't seen a whole lot of him, which I think will work in his favor because he's just kind of a funky guy in general. So, I think here's a bold prediction I'm going to make, and you're going to disagree, but it's just a gut feeling I have.
Okay.
Sunday's Glasnow Heel game is going to be higher scoring than Stone Cortez.
That's interesting.
And I don't fully know why I feel that way, but I just feel like Nestor is going to be a dog against the Dodgers and just kind of, cause issues.
Going to be that guy.
I think Stone is like really becoming a dude. Like I think Stone is making a real argument that he should be one of our playoff starters at this point.
Yeah.
And it just like Glasnow and Heel, both of them are just guys that I feel like could give up a couple homers. I don't know why. I just feel like they're going to give up a few homers. And there's just something about the game that everybody thinks is going to be a pitching matchup that it never is. I'll never forget.
It's true.
The best example of this I've ever seen when Chris Sale was with the White Sox and he was like all world and the White Sox were pretty good.
Yeah.
There was a Friday night game at Dodger Stadium back when the White Sox visiting Dodger Stadium was really rare. And it was Chris Sale and Clayton Kershaw. And I remember I was like, I got to get tickets for that pitching matchup. Like I have to go to that game.
Right. Yeah.
And I got like shitty tickets out in the outfield and it was Sale and Kershaw and everybody was expecting 0-0 into the 8th. That game was 6-6 in the 4th inning.
That's so wild.
Like both guys just got drilled, and it was just like, okay, like just one of those games. So, I mean, you gotta love baseball, man.
That's the thing. Is like the game that is going to end up being the pitcher's duel in this series is probably going to end up being Cody Poteet and Yamamoto. Like Cody Poteet's going to throw 7 shutout innings against the Dodgers or something like that. Like that's the thing. Is like you're 100% right about this series about these games as well. Is like Glasnow owns the Yankees, but maybe he doesn't own Juan Soto, right? Like because when Tyler Glasnow faced the Yankees, Juan Soto wasn't here, so it's possible. So. Baseball's a funny sport, man. That's why we're doing this. It's because this stuff is fun. It's just the way it is. But, okay. That concludes the 1-2-3 inning. We'll give you our second score update here. The Phillies took home a 3-1 win in Philly against the Brewers earlier tonight. The Mets and Nationals. The Mets lead 8-5. Heading into the 7th. You see, Dalton, you talk shit about the Mets while wearing a Mets hat, they score 5 unanswered. That's what they do.
Mean, my dirty little secret is I'm on Mets first 5 and Mets full game tonight, so I'm not too mad about it.
See, there you go.
Yeah.
Dirty I like that dirty little secret. So yes, Mets leading the Nationals in Washington heading into the 7th. The Orioles have a 6-2 lead on the Blue Jays in Toronto in the bottom of the 7th. Tigers and Rangers knotted up at 1 in the bottom of the 4th. The Cardinals, I'm telling you, man, see, like I took another risky pick in Survivor Pool this week. I took the Astros this week. And they are home against the Cardinals. And then I think they're at the Angels. And I'm like that's doable to go 3-3 this week. And right now they are down 3-0 in Houston to the St. Louis Cardinals.
Yeah, there really weren't any easy choices this week.
No, there's not.
By the way, I have a weird feeling that, like, and I'm curious to get your thoughts on this because it's one more thing about the Yankees. Before the Dodgers come to town, they have 3 at home against the Twins.
Yeah.
And, like, you know, right now the Yankees hype train is, like, at an all-time high.
Right, yeah.
And the Yankees own the Twins talk is all-time loud.
Yeah.
The Twins are playing pretty good ball.
They are.
Like, I have a weird feeling that the Yankees might be, like, maybe there's a little bit of look ahead to the Dodgers. You know what I mean? Like, and maybe there's a little bit of lack of respect for the Twins. Maybe the Twins come in with a chip on their shoulder. Like, I have a sneaking suspicion that the Twins, like, are going to be pesky, much peskier than usual with the Yankees the next few nights. Just, like, kind of thinking through the mental game. That's where my brain goes. Not watch the Yankees sweep them, but just I don't know, a sneaking suspicion of mine.
Yeah, no, it's not, again, that's not like a dumb thought or anything like that. Just to give you an idea, the pitching matchups in those games are Bailey Ober and Luis Heel on Tuesday. Wednesday, it's Chris Paddock and Carlos Rodon. And then on Thursday, it's Pablo Lopez and Marcus Stroman. So the Yankees, I think, definitely have the pitching edge in those games, but you're 100% right. I mean, there's a possibility, like, they just came home from a West Coast trip, right? They just took 7 out of 9 in the West Coast trip. I'm sure that they're in some cases gassed, right? So do they fall asleep for a game? It's certainly possible that happens. But again, the Yankees own the fucking Twins. So, that's just the way it is. And it's a shame too, because I actually like the Twins. My uncle is a diehard Twins fan. That's just the way it is, man. I actually like it when the Twins are good. And, it despite the Yankee ownership, it brings me a little bit of sorrow when we kick the crap out of them all the time. I wish it was a little bit more competitive. But back to the score update, 3-0 Cardinals over the Astros in the bottom of the third. Kyle Gibson right now shutting out the Astros, and Justin Verlander seems to be getting shelled by the Cardinals at the moment. 3 innings, 3 earned, 4 hits. He's given up 2 home runs already in this game. Alec Burleson, Nolan Gorman both took him deep. So not feeling great right now. This is really kind of shitty. Heading into the bottom of the second, the Reds and Rockies are tied 1-1. And again, Padres, Angels later tonight, Matt Waldron, Tyler Anderson, and the Giants and Diamondbacks. A riveting pitching matchup in Arizona with Eric Miller and Ryan Nelson. Circle it on the calendar, folks. Okay. So we've reached that time. Dalton's hot corner. Put some more money in your pocket. Buddy, what do you have?
Yeah, just a straight pick for tomorrow. It's a game that I just don't think is lined aggressively enough. I am taking the Tampa Bay Rays tomorrow on the road in Miami against the Fish. Rays are only minus 120 or so. You can get them minus 118 at DraftKings. That's the best line I'm seeing out there. For me, it's a pretty simple handicap. Ryan Pepio is good. I'm telling you from watching him with the Dodgers, that kid's good. Like, I was not thrilled that we had to give him up in the Glasnow deal. And he's looked very solid for Tampa. I think this is a great matchup for him to go out and shove against Miami. And Luzardo, like, for all the promise that there is there and how good he can look at times, he just really hasn't been great. And this is a Tampa team that's got righties that can mash lefties. You look at a Rosarena, you look at Yandy Diaz. Like, they just have guys who you're going to feel good about in this matchup. Not to mention Harold Ramirez, Isaac Paredes, Ahmed Rosario, Jose Siri. Like, they just stack righties against you. And so, to me, I would make Tampa more like minus 150 here. I just think this is a better lineup. It's a better starting pitcher. It's a better bullpen. It's the obvious pick, and it should be a little bit more expensive. So give me Tampa minus 120 on the road in Miami tomorrow night.
Yeah. No, I think that's a fairly good pick. Ryan Pepio he's kind of like Tyler Glasnow in a way.
Yeah.
Like in the ways in the games that I've seen him pitch, he looks and throws like Tyler Glasnow. It's funny. They traded Tyler Glasnow for Tyler Glasnow too. Like that's what they did. And you're right about Luzardo. You're right about Luzardo. I think Luzardo is kind of getting pumped here because like the starting pitching market when it comes to like available guys, it's thin. Really, really thin. And Luzardo is probably the cream of the crop in that market of who's available. So he's probably being made out to be better than he actually is. I mean, there certainly is, like you said, potential there with Luzardo, hard-throwing lefty with crazy stuff. But at the same time, you know, he's been in the big leagues for a few years now and has never really looked like a bona fide top 10 prospect like he was.
Yeah, he's looked good at times, but never elite. Also, by August 1st, he will be a San Diego Padre.
It's very
he will. And they're going to overpay for him.
Oh man.
So you can book that. He will be a San Diego Padre by August 1st.
Yeah, I'm telling you, man. Michael King, welcome to the Miami Marlins. Could you imagine? No, jeez.
Because Michael King's better than Jesus Luzardo right now.
I know. I know he is.
I mean, I would. But
I know. I'm telling you, man. I love Juan Soto with all of my heart. I really do. But it still pains me to this day that we had to give up Michael King for him. I loved Michael King. Michael King, dude.
You'd make that deal
100 times out of 100. Like I said, I am not saying that I'm like regretting it or anything like that. You're 100% right. I am making that deal 1,000 times out of 1,000. But I miss Michael King. I loved that dude. He was really, really fun to watch, and he was really coming into his own. And that's why we got Juan Soto, because the Padres saw the same thing. Okay, that does it for us. As for Dalton Brown, I'm Mike Guido. Dalton, you have any last words before we say goodnight to the beautiful people that are tuning in to this show?
No, just looking forward to a really fun week of games. Compelling games to the Dodgers in Pittsburgh. Obviously, a fun series next weekend. Yankees have, a good week for them too, right? You're hosting Minnesota and the Dodgers, like a couple probable playoff teams. So, fun week of baseball ahead in general, and I'm looking forward to next week.
Yeah. How about this schedule, by the way, for the Kansas City Royals? I forgot to bring this up, but the Kansas City Royals are at Cleveland. Then they go home to play the Mariners. They are home against the Yankees for 4, and then go to Los Angeles for 3 against the Dodgers. Jeez Louise. How is that, like, for a 2-week stretch? I mean, that's a nightmare.
Yeah, you know what?
The Yankees and Dodgers back-to-back, no off days.
Little bit of futures betting 101. That's the kind of stretch you look for on a schedule where you go, who's an overperforming team that's about to hit a skid?
Yeah.
Like that's and I think they almost got swept by San Diego this weekend too. Their schedule is starting to tighten up. I wonder what their win total projection is for the season right now, or like a bet to not make the playoffs. I wonder what that looks like right now.
Yeah,
like I think that's a team that is starting to be worth a look in those markets, to say the least.
That's interesting. Kansas City did not make playoffs.
On FanDuel right now, the over-under on wins for the Royals is 85.5. I don't think that team's getting to 10 games over 500 at the end of the season. That's what 86 and 76 would be.
Yeah, right.
Like, I'm going to bet that right now, actually.
See, throw it into the hot corner.
Yeah, Kansas City Royals under 85.5 wins, minus 118 on FanDuel. I'm going to poke around and see if there's not a better number elsewhere, but I will be making that bet tonight.
See, there we go. See, this is, again, it's these little tidbits. That's why I have to stick around for the very, very end. We're closing stuff out, and we are giving you nuggets. But all right, that does it for us. Mike Guido, Dalton Brown. This is the Bicoastal Baseball Podcast, the only baseball podcast, exclusive baseball podcast on the Grid Network. We will be back again every Monday night, 8 o'clock Eastern, on YouTube, on X, the whole bit. You can find us virtually everywhere. Again, we'll see you next week. See ya.